I still remember the moment she walked in. Heels clicking, lips tight, attitude already filling the hallway before she even spoke. It was a Monday morning. I was at my desk, as usual, sorting through the latest client schedules, confirming lunch reservations, preparing the briefing notes for the weekly ops meeting. Things that didn't show up on a balance sheet, but made everything run smoothly. For the last 13 years, I'd been the executive assistant to Richard Langston, the founder and CEO of Langston Co, a mid-size but fiercely respected consulting firm in Chicago. Richard built the company from the ground up. I joined in year 2, back when we worked out of a shared office space with a broken coffee machine and only 4 clients to our name. I've watched that company grow through economic slumps, legal battles, and 2 rebrands. I was there for every single one. So when the elevator doors opened and I saw her, Melanie Langston, his 28-year-old daughter, I felt something shift. She didn't greet me, didn't make eye contact. She walked past my desk like I was just a part of the decor, which, to be fair, was better than what came next. "Sarah, right?" she said as she turned back, sunglasses still on. "You're the secretary?" I smiled politely. "Executive assistant to the CEO." She smirked. "Right. Well, that position won't be necessary anymore. I'm restructuring. We're aiming for a more modern dynamic. Agile, flat hierarchy. You know." I blinked. "I'm sorry? You've been here? How long? 10 years? 13, I said quietly. 13, she repeated, like it was something to be embarrassed about. That's a lot of time behind a desk, but we're moving in a different direction. Effective immediately, your role is redundant. I stared at her, heart thudding in my ears. Was this real? No warning, no meeting, no explanation. Just a cold dismissal on a Monday morning. Still, I smiled. Calm, controlled. After all, you don't survive over a decade in corporate America without learning the value of silence. "No problem," I said. Melanie looked momentarily confused by how quickly I accepted it. No drama, no begging, no tears. "Great," she said, waving a manicured hand. "Pack up before lunch and HR will be in touch about your final paycheck." And just like that, she turned and disappeared into her new glass office, Richard's old office. I sat there for a moment, processing. Not because I didn't see it coming. Richard had been hinting for months that he was grooming her to take over. But I didn't expect that. Not the way she did it. Not the sheer lack of respect. I packed in silence. My coworkers glanced over but didn't dare say anything. Some looked away. A few looked sorry. I didn't blame them. It's hard to fight for someone when the person holding the sword is the boss's daughter. By noon, I was gone. I drove home in silence, heart pounding harder with every red light. Not because I was afraid, at least not just that, but because I knew things Melanie didn't. Like how the client list was organized, how contracts were filed, which contacts required handwritten thank you notes, which clients needed monthly check-ins, and which ones would walk away if they didn't hear a familiar voice on the phone. I had been the quiet engine behind that company. Not flashy, not loud, but essential. And now I was out. Just like that. I didn't cry, not even once. Instead, I made tea, opened my laptop, and began to think about every client I had nurtured, every partner I had liaised with, every meeting I had prepared, sometimes single-handedly saving Richard's neck from major fallout. Melanie had made one crucial mistake. She underestimated me. She thought I was just a secretary, replaceable, irrelevant. But the thing is, when you pull a thread that's been holding the whole structure together, the unraveling doesn't happen instantly. It starts slow, subtle, but when it happens, it's unstoppable. And I had just been cut loose, with every name, every phone number, and every quiet secret tucked away in my personal notebook. She had no idea what was coming. Not yet. But she would. The next morning, I woke up early. out of habit more than necessity. For 13 years, my internal clock had been trained to rise before the sun, beat the inbox flood, and anticipate problems before anyone else even noticed them forming. But now, I didn't have a job, no commute, no meeting agendas to prep, just silence and an empty to-do list. Except that wasn't entirely true. Because Melanie Langston may have fired me, but what she didn't realize was that I didn't leave empty-handed. Not in the malicious sense. No documents or stolen property. I had too much integrity for that. But what I did have was my notebook. It was a plain leather-bound journal, the kind you buy in packs of 3 from office supply stores. I had filled dozens over the years, jotted notes, reminders, observations, and most importantly, relationship maps. Not just names and numbers, but who mattered to who. Which client hated being called before 10 a.m.? Which one only signed contracts on Wednesdays? Who preferred handwritten notes over emails? Which vendor once flew across the country just to meet Richard for lunch? And who did it out of obligation rather than loyalty? Melanie didn't ask about any of that. She never even glanced at my desk when she let me go. She thought she could just slide in, change the job titles, and the machine would keep running. But a company isn't a machine. It's a living, breathing ecosystem of relationships. And she had just severed the root system. By Wednesday, 2 days after my firing, I received my first call. It was from Gary Abrams, the head of acquisitions at Deerwood Financial, a client we had retained for over 9 years. "Sarah," he said, voice warm and confused. "We just got an automated email from some intern about the quarterly report. Is everything okay?" I paused. "They didn't notify you?" "About what?" "I'm no longer with Langston and Company." There was a silence on the other end. "You're kidding." "No." "Is Richard okay? Why would he?" "It was his daughter," I said simply. Gary grunted. "Melanie, she's in charge now?" "Yes." Another pause. "Well, that explains the mess. Listen, I don't want to get into the politics of it, but we trusted you. You were the reason we stuck around this long." "I appreciate that." "Number, I mean it. You made things work. You always got things done." We talked for another few minutes. He didn't come out and say he was pulling the account, but he didn't have to. I could hear it in his tone. That first crack. By Thursday, I got 3 more calls, then 2 emails. By Friday afternoon, I had heard from 7 clients. All confused, all disoriented. Some were angry, one furious, that Melanie had reassigned their account to someone who mispronounced their name in a Zoom call. "I thought we mattered to you," one message read. I didn't reply. I couldn't. I didn't work there anymore. But I logged each message in a new notebook. By Friday evening, I received a text from Nicole, a former coworker from the strategy team. She had always been kind, even when others treated me like I was invisible. "Hey, can I call you? Something's happening here." I replied, "Of course." 10 minutes later, my phone lit up. "Sarah," she said quickly, "Melanie's freaking out." "Why?" 3 of our top 5 clients have gone dark. No replies, no calls. One canceled a review meeting without rescheduling. She's pacing like a lion in a cage. I said nothing. She's blaming everyone. Claims the assistant she promoted doesn't know what she's doing. Shock of the century. But you know what she's not doing? What? She's not taking responsibility. She just keeps saying, "We'll win them back with innovation." Nicole laughed bitterly. "Sarah, she doesn't even know who to call. You were the only one who had personal rapport with most of them. She just assumed they'd stick around because the company name meant something." I stayed quiet for a long moment. Then, "Have you spoken to Richard?" "Not directly. He's out of town. Melanie told everyone she's cleaning house and taking the company into the next era." I could almost picture her saying it. Probably while wearing a power suit and giving someone an unearned lecture on synergy. Nicole's voice softened. "People here miss you. I miss them too." We hung up after a few more updates, and I sat on the couch, the house still and quiet around me. Melanie thought I was irrelevant. But here's the thing about people like her. They mistake visibility for value. They think if you're not the one giving the speeches or closing the deals on paper, you don't matter. But I mattered. And by the time Monday rolled around again, she'd know just how much. Because I hadn't made a single call. I didn't rally any troops. I hadn't said a word to a single client about my firing. They were walking away all on their own. All I had to do was wait, and listen, and document. Because the avalanche had started. And Melanie? She was standing right in its path. By Monday morning, it wasn't just a ripple. It was a wave. I hadn't set foot in the office since Melanie fired me. I hadn't sent any messages or warned anyone. Still, the company's once steady heartbeat had turned erratic. I could feel it without even being there. At 9:46 a.m., Nicole texted again. 3 more clients pulled out. Melanie's losing it. I stared at the screen and let the words sink in. In just 1 week, 6 major accounts had either gone quiet or formally severed ties. I opened my notebook and flipped to the names. These weren't just any clients. They were the firm's backbone. Each account worth hundreds of thousands annually. And each one had a deep history with Langston Company. And with me. And yet Melanie hadn't bothered to reach out to a single one personally. Because why would she? In her mind, success was inherited. Respect was assumed. Loyalty was automatic. She never understood the truth. Loyalty is earned in the quiet moments. On late-night calls, handwritten notes, rescheduled meetings during snowstorms, remembered birthdays, and the quiet assurance that someone, somewhere, is keeping the train on the tracks. That was me, and I was gone. I received an unexpected email around 10:15 a.m. It was from one of our former vendors, Thomas, who provided analytics dashboards for several key clients. Subject line, just checking in. Hey, Sarah, I just heard what happened. Melanie reached out to us Friday. Said you left for personal reasons. That didn't sound like you. I just wanted to say I always appreciated your professionalism. Hope you're okay. Thomas, I replied briefly, thanked him and wished him well. I didn't need to defend myself. The silence from Langston Company was doing that for me. At noon, my phone rang. Unknown number. I answered, expecting another vendor or former colleague. Sarah. A deep, familiar voice said, "What the hell is going on?" It was Richard, the original CEO, Melanie's father. I straightened instinctively, even though I was home in leggings with a half-eaten sandwich on the table. Hello, Richard. I just landed an hour ago, he said. And my phone hasn't stopped ringing. Clients, partners, even one of our competitors. They're saying we've gone dark, that Melanie's made some sort of power play, and that you're gone? I paused. She fired me last Monday, said my position was no longer needed. There was a long silence. She what? She called me just a secretary. Another pause. I imagined him rubbing his temples the way he always did when stressed. She told me she was planning a reorg. I thought that meant streamlining some mid-level management, not firing the most trusted person in the building. You trusted me, I said. She didn't. I can't even begin to explain how furious I am, he said. And the clients... God, Sarah, I had no idea you had that kind of connection with them. They're not just clients. They're relationships. And they noticed when I disappeared. He sighed deeply. How many have we lost? I don't know the final count, but last I heard, at least 6 of the top 10 were reconsidering. She never even looked at the client ledger, he muttered. I can't believe I left the company in her hands. You left it in her hands without giving her the tools to understand it. Another silence. Then, where are you right now? Home? Stay there. Don't speak to anyone else about this. I need to see it for myself. He hung up. I sat quietly, trying to slow my pulse. There was a storm coming. Not the frantic kind, but the silent, calculated kind. The kind that shakes foundations. And I wasn't at the center of it anymore. I was the catalyst. At 3 p.m., I got another message from Nicole. Melanie just locked herself in her office. Legal is here. Something's happening. At 4:12 p.m., Richard called again. She didn't tell me anything, he said. No greeting this time. Didn't mention the firings, didn't warn me about the accounts. But you know what really hit me? What? She had no idea how the contracts were set up. You weren't just a secretary. You were listed on 4 client agreements as the point of contact. Some of them only signed because you were involved. I know. Why didn't you ever tell me? Because I didn't need the credit. I just wanted the work to matter. There was a pause. His voice softened. It always did. I see that now. He sighed again, longer this time. She's not equipped for this. I didn't respond. Then finally, Sarah, what would it take for you to come back? I closed my eyes and let the question linger, because what I wanted wasn't just an apology. It was a reckoning. I didn't answer Richard's question right away. What would it take for you to come back? He asked it with urgency, but I let the silence linger. I knew he was pacing. I knew his mind was racing, trying to hold on to the remains of the company he'd built. Finally, I said, if I do come back, it won't be to sit quietly behind a desk. Name your terms, he replied without hesitation. Full decision-making authority over client services, I said, reporting directly to you. I want my title changed. I want access to all the reports and client data. And I want it in writing that Melanie will not have any authority over my work. There was a pause. Short, but telling. I can make that happen, he said. I'm not done, I continued. I want to implement a new onboarding system for staff, something we should have done years ago. I want a say in hiring, and I want Melanie to issue a formal internal statement acknowledging her error. Another pause. That last part might be difficult. I know, but if I'm coming back to clean up this mess, I want everyone to know exactly why the mess happened in the first place. He let out a slow breath. Understood. I knew then that he didn't just want me back. He needed me. Not out of guilt or loyalty, but out of cold, hard business necessity. The structure was crumbling, and I was the only one who still knew where the beams were. The next morning, I got an official email. Interim Director of Client Services. Immediate effect. Reporting directly to the CEO. Attached was the contract, signed and scanned. Everything I'd asked for. I arrived at the office just after 11 a.m. I didn't use the side entrance. I walked straight through the main lobby, heels clicking sharply across the marble floor. Every head turned. Conversations died mid-sentence. People watched me the way one might watch a phoenix walk back into the ashes. Nicole met me at the elevator. She looked like she wanted to hug me, but settled for a quiet nod. She's in the conference room, she whispered. Good. Richard was already inside when I stepped in. So was Melanie. She looked like a ghost. Pale, shoulders tense, jaw clenched so tightly you could hear it creak. A couple of department heads sat along the far wall, unsure whether to stand or sink into their chairs. I walked to the head of the table and placed my bag down calmly. Richard gestured for me to sit beside him. Melanie's eyes locked on me like I was a ghost she'd hoped never to see again. Richard cleared his throat. As some of you are aware, we've had a few operational disruptions. Disruptions? Melanie snapped. They're calling it a mass client exodus. Richard didn't flinch. Whatever we call it, we're responding now. Sarah has agreed to return in a leadership capacity. Effective immediately, Melanie's mouth dropped open slightly. What? You made a call without understanding the structure beneath it, he said bluntly. Now you're seeing the results. Sarah has the experience we need to regain control. This is not up for debate. Melanie laughed bitterly. She's a secretary, or did we all forget that? No, I said, locking eyes with her. You forgot that I was the bridge between your clients and your contracts. You forgot that I knew them. Not just their names, but their patterns, their expectations, their values. And most of all, you forgot that companies don't thrive on hierarchy. They thrive on trust. She stood abruptly. So what? You're here to humiliate me? No, I replied. I'm here to save what's left. Melanie looked at her father. You're really letting her do this? I'm not letting her, he said. I'm asking her, and you should be grateful she said yes. There was a long, excruciating silence. Melanie didn't sit back down. She turned and walked out. The door closed behind her with a soft but final click. Richard turned to the others. We'll be issuing a statement this afternoon to our remaining clients. Sarah will be the point of contact for all retention efforts. The department heads nodded. Some looked visibly relieved. I stood. I'll need access to all the communications logs from the last 3 weeks. I want to know exactly where we stand. Richard nodded. It's yours. I left the conference room with purpose, my pulse calm but steady. Melanie had walked in a week ago thinking she could wipe the slate clean and rebuild from scratch. But she had no idea that the foundation she demolished was the only thing keeping the company upright. And now, I was the one holding the pieces. But I wasn't putting them back the way they were. I was building something stronger, something better. And she was officially on the outside. Over the next 48 hours, I barely looked up from my desk. The first step was stabilizing what was left. My inbox had turned into a battlefield. Clients confused, nervous, some angry. Others had gone completely silent, and that was worse. I knew the signs. Silence meant conversations were already happening with competitors. I reached out personally. No canned messages, no marketing fluff. I wrote each email myself, tailoring them with the kind of detail that only comes from years of real connection. Birthdays, kids' names, client-specific frustrations I had resolved at 11 p.m. on weekends. I wasn't just asking them to stay. I was reminding them why they had chosen us in the first place. By the end of day 2, I'd spoken to 14 clients. 9 of them confirmed they were open to renegotiation. 5 were non-committal, but I could tell I'd at least bought us time. It was more than Melanie had managed in a week. Nicole came by that afternoon with 2 cups of coffee. You look like you haven't blinked since this morning. I probably haven't. She hesitated before setting the cup down. I don't mean to stir the pot, but Melanie's been telling people she was the one who asked you to come back. I smiled faintly. Let her. You're not going to correct it? I don't need to. People are watching. They can see who's actually fixing things. Nicole nodded slowly. Still, it's pathetic. That's desperation, I said, and desperation always leaves a trail. Later that evening, I was in the conference room when Richard walked in. He looked older than I remembered, more worn. The weight of the week had settled in his shoulders. How bad is it? He asked. Realistically? We've already lost close to 80% of our high-value accounts. If we don't salvage the rest in the next 10 days, we'll have to consider downsizing. Heavily. He exhaled sharply and sat down across from me. I never thought it would unravel this fast. Because you underestimated the glue. He looked up. You mean you? I didn't respond. He leaned forward. Sarah, I let my daughter run this company into the ground. I thought giving her the title would make her rise to it. But she used it like a shield. She didn't lead. She ruled. Titles don't make leaders, I said. Actions do. He nodded slowly. So what happens now? You let me finish what I started. You give me room to rebuild our reputation, and not just externally. Internally, too. Staff morale is in the basement. People are scared. They don't trust leadership right now. We can't sell stability to clients if our own house is chaos. He tilted his head. And Melanie? I don't need her gone, but I do need her out of my way. He gave a faint, tired smile. Consider it done. By the end of the week, we had launched a formal outreach campaign. Every team member was assigned a list of clients to call, guided by templates I created. Every interaction was documented. Every concern tracked. We shifted focus away from excuses and toward accountability. It wasn't flashy. It wasn't viral. But it was real. And it was working. On Friday afternoon, I was reviewing a new draft contract when Melanie stormed into my office. Uninvited, red-faced, her voice sharp. "You've been undermining me." I looked up, calm. "Good afternoon, Melanie." "Don't play nice. You've been erasing me, taking over everything. People look at you like you're the CEO. I'm just doing my job." "You're doing my job. I'm the future of this company." "No," I said evenly. "You were the experiment. The future is still being decided." She laughed coldly. "You think you've won because you got your little title and fixed a few contracts?" "I think I've been trusted. By the clients, by the staff, and by your father. Trust is not something you inherit, Melanie. It's something you earn." She glared at me, then stormed out. I didn't flinch. I didn't raise my voice. I just turned back to the contract and kept working. Because when you know your worth, you don't need to prove it by shouting. You show it, every single day through results. And the results were becoming undeniable. By Monday morning, the company felt different. Not fixed, not yet, but different. The hallways had gone from dead quiet to cautiously alive. Staff meetings were no longer dominated by fear or silence. People were speaking up again. Department heads were submitting ideas instead of excuses. And when they passed me in the corridor, they nodded, not out of obligation, but recognition. They knew. They all knew now. I wasn't just the woman who once sat quietly behind a desk scheduling flights and fixing calendar overlaps. I was the one who had held this place together. The one who rebuilt what arrogance almost destroyed. And Melanie? She had grown quieter, colder. Her presence, once loud and commanding, had become a ghost in the background, seen but no longer felt. She wasn't fired, not officially, but she had been removed from decision-making. Her badge still worked. Her office still had her name on the door, but the trust was gone, and she could feel it. So could I. On Tuesday, Richard called me into his office. His expression was serious, but his eyes, tired as they were, held something I hadn't seen in weeks. Calm. He gestured for me to sit. "We've stabilized," he began. "Your numbers saved us. I reviewed the final client retention reports this morning. We managed to recover 60% of our lost accounts." "I know. I spoke with most of them myself." He nodded. "And the board knows that. They also know you wrote the internal recovery plan. You trained the interim client teams. You managed staff communications during one of the most volatile months we've ever had." I waited. He reached for a folder. Inside was a formal offer letter. "I want you to stay on permanently as Chief Client Officer, executive title. You'll oversee all client relations strategy. Full autonomy. You'll report only to me." I looked down at the offer. The salary bump was generous. The benefits, upgraded. But none of that was why I said yes. I said yes because this time the title matched the truth. I stood and shook his hand. "I'll accept, on one condition." He raised an eyebrow. "Name it." "I want to create a mentorship program. For women, for support staff, for people who've been seen as just something, just a secretary, just an assistant, just a junior. I want to make sure no one else is ever underestimated the way I was." His face broke into a full, rare smile. "Consider it done." I left his office with the letter in hand and a fire in my chest. Not anger, not revenge. Purpose. That afternoon, as I was walking past the glass conference room where Melanie once held court, I saw her standing alone. She was staring out the window, arms crossed, her reflection half merged with the skyline. She turned when she noticed me. Her eyes were tired. No makeup, no posture, no pretense. Just a young woman who had mistaken authority for power and power for invincibility. "I know you think I don't deserve this office," she said quietly. "I don't think anything," I replied. "Deserve has nothing to do with it. It's about what you do once you're given a chance. She looked away. You made me look weak. No, I said, voice firm. You did that all on your own. I just refused to cover for it. Silence filled the space between us. Then she asked, almost like a child, Did you hate me? No, I answered truthfully. I pitied you, because you walked into a legacy built by your father and never bothered to understand the people who helped build it. She didn't respond. I left her there. Later that evening, I sat in my new office. Glass walls, a view of the river, a nameplate that finally felt earned. I pulled out the old notebook from my bag. The one where it all started. Its pages were worn, ink fading in places, corners bent from years of flipping back and forth. I turned to the final page and wrote one last note. It's not about the title on your door. It's about the trust behind it. Weeks passed. The company didn't just recover. It evolved. The mentorship program launched quietly but gained traction fast. Within months, we had tripled engagement scores. Former interns and assistants began stepping into new roles. Confidence spread like wildfire, and clients noticed. Because in the end, people don't stay loyal to logos or slogans or leadership charts. They stay loyal to people who show up when it matters most. And I had shown up. Even when I'd been told I was irrelevant. Even when I was discarded like office clutter. I hadn't burned the building down. I just let it collapse under the weight of its own arrogance. And when the dust settled, I didn't point fingers. I got to work. That's what real leadership looks like. And that's a legacy no one can take away.